I first want to acknowledge my colleague Ted Folger, who's in the back and sort of part of our team at Every Child Succeeds at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And try to represent our efforts here today. I chose the title very deliberately. I joined Every Child Succeeds in 1999, and I joined it because I thought that the idea of creating a community-based home visiting program with a dedicated research component was very novel. And this was just a great opportunity. I still think it's novel in the sense that I don't think there are very many sort of organizations set up in this way. And what I want to do with today's presentation is to talk about the experience, to talk about how the program was set up, some of the decisions that were made, many of which turned out to be good decisions, some not as good. Some of the issues we've faced, again, sort of positive and negative in terms of engaging the different kinds of stakeholders and partners that you have to have in this effort. And I think there's a lot to be learned here. I think there are going to be elements of what I talk about that are very sort of idiosyncratic to our organization and aren't going to be applicable in terms of the work that you do. But I think there are a lot of things here. There are gems of how to approach this work and how to create a research infrastructure that really sets it up so that collaboration, stakeholders, partnerships have a high likelihood of coming together and working together in a very meaningful way. So that's the spirit in which this is sort of offered, and I hope everyone walks away saying, you know, the 2 or 3 things that they did there, I think I can take that back and use that. Yeah, there you go. Out of myself. Just a little bit about Every Child Succeeds. It is a regional home visiting program. It's based in Cincinnati. It's run by Cincinnati Children's Hospital, but it's really a collaborative, the way it's set up. There were 3 founding partners: Cincinnati Children's Hospital, the United Way, and Community Action Agency. And so right off the bat, there are stakeholders. 3 stakeholders, each of them important, 2 of them sort of big and representing a lot of interests in the region. And I'm talking about Cincinnati Children's Hospital and our United Way, which is quite large for United Way in the U.S. The second thing is we operate 4 different models of home visiting. Healthy Families America, the HANDS program in Kentucky, Early Head Start, and we also have a Safe Care program. We've had a nurse-family partnership program. We had 3 sites at one point. We don't anymore, but we have that experience as well. And that's important because one of the messages of this meeting is finding sort of common elements, cross-model kinds of discoveries. And from the outset, Every Child Succeeds set itself up as having several models and being interested in some of these common elements. And I think that was important in a lot of different, for a lot of different reasons. The 4 programs have somewhat different sort of eligibility criteria, and but otherwise, most of the moms join prenatally. They have certain demographic risk characteristics, and very much mirror the kinds of populations that are in other home visiting programs around the country. We operate in 7 counties in southwestern Ohio and northern Kentucky. And this is sort of a geocode map showing sort of where the moms live. Most of them cluster around the Cincinnati region, but you can see they're all over the place. And if you haven't been to Cincinnati, when you drive outside of the sort of urban area and then through the suburban areas, pretty soon you do get pretty rural pretty quickly. And some of the regions in Kentucky in particular, were rural communities. So we do cover this sort of whole range of urban, suburban, and rural. It's a large area, and that creates opportunities, but it also creates a whole lot of stakeholders. A lot of people who have an interest, a lot of people who participate, who contribute in one form or another, and their needs, interests, and opinions need to be taken into account. It also, however, creates sort of a large number of people. And as researchers, we usually like large sample sizes, or at least struggle to get the kinds of sample sizes that we need to adequately power our research. Although some of the methods we've learned about the last 2 days are sort of more forgiving in that area. But one of the nice things, and this was certainly one of the things that did bring me to Cincinnati originally, was the potential to have a sizable pool of potential participants in the program and in the research. And we've seen over 26,000 families since the beginning, and provided over 600,000 home visits. At any given point, we're serving between 2,500 and 3,000 families a year. So that creates opportunities, I think, for research. We're also set up in kind of an interesting way that I think there were some good decisions made here, not just for the program, but also in terms of thinking about research and how to advance research. I mentioned the 3 founding partners who of course continue to be very involved. Every Child Succeeds was set up as a separate 501c3 organization. That was a good idea. So although ECS is managed by Children's Hospital, it's not really owned by Children's Hospital. It's owned, if anything, by the 3 founding partners and all of the stakeholders. So it creates already an environment of this sense of shared ownership. The actual services are provided by 9 agencies that are embedded in the communities in these 7 counties. That was also a good decision. So those agencies are contracted to provide the service. So that there's another sort of level of collaboration there. ECS does not own the home visitors or even directly employ them. They are employed and directly supervised by these 9 agencies. Many of these agencies are anchor institutions in their communities. The first one listed there, Beach Acres, was founded in the 1840s as an orphanage. I mean, it has been around for a very long time and has a great deal of respect in the community. Santa Maria Community Services is based in a part of Cincinnati called Price Hill, where a number of moms in our service in Every Child Succeeds are seen. They've been there since the 1880s. I mean, you really get to sort of leverage sort of multiple levels of respected and credible organizations and people. It facilitates the research because you do get to leverage that. You do get to work with those reputations and that trust. But you also have to deliver and make sure that all of these people have a say in one form or another. So early decisions that were good ones. The affiliation with an academic medical center, in particular a children's hospital, was a good one. And I have another slide that's going to show why that's good. You'll all resonate with it since just about everybody is from an academic institution. But what's unusual here, I mean, the traditional way is the service is over here, the academic institution is here, we figure out how to make bridges. We're all in the same place. The leadership and administration for Every Child Succeeds is in the hospital. We all see each other in the hallway and in the cafeteria. Opportunities for collaboration really grow out of that. We also get to leverage the reputation of an academic institution that's very well respected in the region. Children's hospitals are usually very well regarded in their communities, so it provides sort of an additional level of things to work with. Because we're a separate 501c3, we have a board, and we have a board that's comprised of a number of both community leaders, but also business people. Cincinnati is the home of Procter & Gamble and Kroger's and GE aircraft engines, although I don't know if that was the engine that was on the plane. This is what Ted and I think about as we contemplate our trip back. But a number of really very successful, multinational corporations with a great deal of expertise, and we try to, and we get to sort of take advantage of that. And they're very interested in the business case. So right off the bat, in terms of figuring out how to collaborate with all of these people, we need to figure out what their language is and what resonates with them, and it's different. We used an RFA system to select the agencies. They had to submit a proposal. I think that was actually a very insightful thing to do that I don't think people realized how good it was. However, we have 9 agencies that wanted to be part of this organization, and from the get-go recognized that research was going to be one of the things they were going to be involved with. And as a result, we at least had, I don't think they fully understood what it meant, but at least they had said, this is something that we agree, this is important, we would like to be part of this. I think that was very good. Okay. We have a dedicated research staff. Now, at this point, a lot of that staff is supported by grants, but for quite a while it was not. It was supported by the organization. That was important. It allowed us to really set up this infrastructure and to go out and meet with everyone and to really create the kinds of relationships that we would use over time as we introduce different research ideas. I'm the scientific director. Ted is the evaluation director. I used to be the evaluation director, and Frank Putnam was the scientific director. He moved to the University of North Carolina, although he's still involved with some of our work. But we have a data analyst. We have a web-based data collection system. All of these things are part of that infrastructure that positions us to sort of do this work. We have a scientific advisory committee. It's comprised of both people in the organization, members of the board, but also members of the community. We have several moms who are on the board. None has joined the scientific advisory committee yet, but we're hoping to do that. We have shared program and research staff. So there are some people who are working part of the time on program-related issues, but part of the time on research issues. So this sort of distinction between research and practice is deliberately blurred. I think to the benefit ultimately of both, because they're working together. One of the therapists in our Moving Beyond Depression program used to be a home visitor. And she said, when I was a home visitor and I saw this program, I decided I wanted to go and get a master's degree in mental health counseling and hope to come back and be a therapist with the program. And that's exactly what happened. One of our research staff, who was clinical research coordinator, used to be a home visitor. Same thing. She got exposed to the research that we were doing and said, this is really interesting. I want to do this as part of my career. So everyone sees this. It's part of, it's observed that people move sort of through these systems. The strong ties to the academic medical center, of course, have allowed us access to a lot of expertise. that we wouldn't otherwise have. Now, I think all of us sort of reach out to colleagues who have expertise that we don't have. But the system we've created really makes it pretty easy. Again, they're there. People are there. They hear about us. People will contact us and say, I heard about your program. I'm wondering if it would fit my research interests. And we have a system for sort of determining, is this something we want to move ahead with. But you can see some of the divisions of the hospital that we've worked with. The hospital brings other kinds of resources, grants management and things that you're familiar with. But again, because of the proximity of these entities, it really moves pretty smoothly. And we're able to do training and bring in fellows who do their studies within Every Child Succeeds, and early career scholars as well. Data collection is the language of our program. That is something that everyone was committed to, and many of the business people on the board drove that kind of thinking. And that's what allowed us to create our data collection system, which has been very helpful. This is sort of a potpourri of different kinds of things that have sort of helped us. ECS was one of the founding partners of the Home Visiting Summit that brought proximity. I got to meet a lot of people I wouldn't otherwise meet, and because of that creates opportunities for collaboration across institutions. One of the responsibilities, however, there are a lot of responsibilities that come with this. We've used a lot of different designs, and of course that's a good thing, right? From a science perspective, that's a good thing. But one of the reasons why we've done it is because we have a lot of stakeholders. There are a lot of different interests about what should be studied and what shouldn't be studied, and we often move to designs as ways to respond to those kinds of needs and interests. We've been reflected in a lot of different journals, all for the same kind of reason. People are working with us, and they have their own kinds of journals. There's no Journal of Home Visiting. Maybe HARC can do that. Maybe you guys can do that next year. So again, it's a good thing scientifically, but it's also a reflection of the responsibility that we have working with multiple stakeholders and working in lots of different areas. This just sort of shows sort of the momentum that is gained in terms of publications and presentations as these teams are built and these collaborations work. We've done a lot of different, again, sort of topics and issues. Honestly, if it was just sort of me reaching out to a home visiting program, there'd be 3 of these topics maybe. But because there are all these other people have come in, it's been a bit of a magnet. And because of the stakeholders reaching out and saying, I just talked to somebody the other day who came and did a training at my agency. What do you know about that person? Maybe they can do work with us. Those are the kinds of things that really cause this to move ahead. We've been pretty successful at getting NIH grants, which I think is a reflection of having created this sort of infrastructure, and also, frankly, having sort of the cross-model interest. I think those are 2 things that at least have been called out in the different reviews we've gotten, and I think it's an important consideration as we think about NIH funding for home visiting research, because I think we all agree there should be more. I want to just give a quick example of what we've experienced working with one of our particular studies, our first depression treatment study. Just to highlight some of the issues faced in creating these collaborations. I divided, I guess Darius had 3 different stages. I sort of did these 4, and I guess I came up with sort of just having the idea as being the first stage. Because when we have even when we just have the idea, should we study this? Is this an area we should look at? That's the point at which we reach out to whoever we have to start talking to make sure that it resonates, but also to make sure that we get the support to do this kind of work. I did run out of pictures, so I had to put in a picture of Fiona, but it's a good one because she had a negative birth outcome. And she was premature, for those of you who know the story of Fiona, so a Cincinnati icon. So it still counts. The board, having to deal with the board, well, that isn't how I should phrase it. Having the opportunity to talk with the board, creates, it's a group of stakeholders. They're really interested in the mission. They want to make sure that the research benefits the organization. They have a lot of interests in things like employment and job development and education. I don't talk to the board much about attachment. It's not that they don't think it matters, but they don't fully understand it, and it's not exactly what resonates with them. So translating our work into the kinds of things that are of interest to them is important. They have different priorities. Sometimes they'll say, why don't you study that over there? And we may not want to study that over there for different reasons, but we have to sort of talk about it and explain our thinking and get their buy-in. They don't like clinical trials, and they don't like research that takes a long time. So we often get the, can't you do something that doesn't take as long, is much less expensive, and gives us the same quality of data that you would get from a rigorous design. That's an ongoing discussion. I've had 19 years of that discussion. That is a really hard discussion to have, but we have to have it. We also have to engage the agencies. Now, the agencies are comprised of home visitors, but as agencies, they have their own interests. They really like issues that come from the data they have collected. And we have learned to really use the data that they collect as part of the evaluation. And all these home visiting programs, all of you are collecting data, to show it to them and say, look, this is why we're interested in depression. Look how big a problem that is in our program. I'm not going to show you someone else's article or something. I'm going to show you what our data, your data that you created by collecting this data, has produced. They like individual stories, so then generating stories of a few moms was important in this to really help them resonate. They didn't like the clinical trials either, but we discussed that and sort of got through that as to why that was something that was important. Now I have to explain Bayesian adaptive trials. Ted, can you do that? I may take a pass on that. They're real interested in whether any of this research interferes with their service or burden or overlap. When we talked about introducing a therapist into the home, is that competition? There are all these kinds of issues. Oh, here you go. Oh, one. Oh, my God. Okay, look, can I give that back to you? Here we go, 10. Let me put those two together. Okay. I wanted to sort of point out early adopters. We've got 9 agencies. There are 3 or 4 of them I go to first. Because they're really engaged, they're interested, and we look first for the people who we think are going to be out there in front to bring the others along. I had this idea of agency liaisons. In this particular study, we identified a home visitor at each agency who was the conduit through which information was passed. It was partially successful, but I still like the idea, and I think that's an idea that you can take and apply. The home visitors respond to many of the same things. Again, data you collected was used to make this decision. You tell me stories about what this problem is like, and then that'll help me explain to you why our research might be helpful. They take a lot of pride in being part of a research entity. And that was unexpected, but it's something we've really noticed. It's a job enrichment experience for them. They feel like they're part of something bigger and more important than the typical social service job. And I think that really, we should appeal to that. And they were involved in many of the sort of products that we used. Moms, too. We do focus groups, we do interviews. We bounce all of our materials off of them, not quite in the formal way that Daria's described, but I think we probably should, so I sort of learned from that. I just wanted to say one thing just about creative works. We've had moms who've done paintings about their experiences with depression and then show them to us, and it's like, wow. I mean, we've sort of learned the language of their experience in part from some of their creative works. This is precision home visiting. We didn't call it precision home visiting, but this is precision home visiting. We identified a group. It had some specific special needs that we didn't think the program was fully in a position to react to, and we created a way to respond to it. So I think it's very much in line with what we've been talking about, and of course we've been able to carry that to a dissemination, and the program's now in 10 different states. There are challenges. It's a lot of work to keep this up. A lot of even when you have one conversation, you'll probably have the same conversation again in 6 months. People really wrestle with some of these issues, and that's fine. It's the way it is. People have different views. Not everyone gets what they want. We don't get what we want all the time. You give something up when you do this. They don't like burden, but it's impossible to do research without some burden. So, minimizing it but recognizing it is important. There are shifting regulations. Anyone who works with these state programs know that every 3 months they're changing something, and it really screws up research. The program makes decisions that often we're part of, which is good, because that's, again, the good part of having us all together. Sometimes it just sort of happens, and suddenly we sort of have to deal with that. And then the black box and underground practices. There are lots of things home visitors do that no one knows that they're doing. That's true in every single one of these programs. And you discover them as you go as you dig deeper, and then you realize, wow, this is an issue I need to understand and take into account. So just to thank colleagues and participants at ECS and how important that is. And 0.